Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to do a little bit of map study. So it is springtime, throughout the country. This is the last couple days of March, but we're getting into April. And to me, April is kind of the primary month that the spawn really starts moving in this region of the country. I live in East Tennessee on the shores of Lake Chickamauga, and definitely on Lake Chickamauga and in the Tennessee, region, and throughout this particular region, the spawn is definitely very, very strong during April. So, this really depends on the region of the country that you're fishing. But most of the stuff that we're going to be talking about, you can apply to anywhere in the country in any type of lake. But we're going to definitely be kind of focusing on Lake Chickamauga or Tennessee River lakes. The first thing I need to mention is that, we're going to be going over all this on the Navionics Mobile app on my iPad. And let me tell you, having good mapping is super critical. As we know, most people nowadays know the benefits of having good mapping cards on their units on their boats. But I love doing map study on my Navionics mobile app. And, I'm going to Toledo Bend next week, and just being able to do the map study at home. And, if I have some free time, just log on here and start, breaking down these lakes. It's an invaluable tool. So definitely check it out. But essentially, we're going to go ahead and dive into specifically Lake Chickamauga, but I'm just going to be kind of, talking about general areas that you need to look for during this time period, specifically, more so April and going into May and primarily the spawn. So, again, we're talking about that time period of the year where things are starting to warm up. The water temperatures are creeping into the low 60s and even into the mid and high 60s in some instances if you have a really good warm spell. But this is the time where so many of the fish, the majority of the fish, are really, really motivated to move shallow. They start cruising around and they start, finding these areas where they want to create their beds, lock on. And so you've all got a lot of different things going on. You've got fish that are staging, waiting to move up into these spawning areas. You've got fish that have already started making their beds. And you've also got, some fish that potentially could have already been part of an earlier spawning, wave. And so maybe you got some post spawners as well, fry garters and things like that. So there's a lot of things going on, but the common theme is that a lot of the fish are shallow. And so finding the right shallow areas is kind of the biggest key. So let's go ahead and dive into Lake Chickamauga here. This is, we've got the Sonar chart layer turned on here. I'll show you the difference between Sonar charts and no Sonar charts. Let's go to map options here. We'll turn on Sonar charts. It's not that big of a deal in this particular area. If you go to other regions with that Sonar chart on, there's it off. So much more detail overall. And honestly, during the spawn, I always keep Sonar charts on when it comes to fishing. And when I'm fishing, I've got one unit on my boat at the console that usually it's my Humminbird unit that I actually like to have nautical charts on, because it kind of declutters the screen a little bit and just helps me focus on, the depth contours for navigation, not necessarily finding the fish. But as far as most of the situations I'm going to be dealing with, I'm going to be keeping Sonar charts on. All right, so the very first thing, there's a couple of different areas that you can look for on a lake like Lake Chickamauga. You can look for those areas that have the majority, like a huge population of fish that are going to be spawning in an area. So you're looking for a big spawning, bay or creek or something like that has very gradual sloping contours across most of the area. and you know, it just has great, good dynamic offshore structure where those fish are going to go to. So the fish can essentially live in that area year round. And right off the bat, looking at Lake Chickamauga here, let me get rid of this. We've got two of the biggest spawning areas and most popular areas of the lake right here. You've got Harrison Bay. Okay, you can see here we've got a lot of shallow water areas around the Harrison Bay Islands. Okay, the contours are very, very far apart, very gradual sloping. There's lots of great spawning habitat, hard bottom, shell beds, and there's a lot of like reeds and you know, shallow water vegetation and cover that the fish have in that area. And it's just a huge area. And then you've got these offshoots, these little creek arms that also have great gradual sloping spawning areas, usually towards the back on these type of little pockets. You can see the mouths are a little bit steeper contours, but once you get to the backs, that's where most of the spawning is going to be. Out here on the islands, though, you got very gradual sloping contours pretty much throughout on this big flat, so the fish can spawn just about anywhere. So on Lake Chickamauga, Harrison Bay, very, very well known as a spawning bay. Chester Frost is another one. This is a huge, huge player during the spawn because you can see here, got a lot of gradual sloping contours, a lot of nice protected bays here. But you've also got great offshore structure that those fish can go to once they get off the beds. So that is one thing that I look for when I'm going to a new body of water. Is I would say that the first thing I start looking for, no matter what the season is, but especially during the spawn, is I look for those larger areas that have the most gradual sloping structure on the lake. So generally, on average, shallower water in those areas. And what that is kind of denoting is an area where it has an extreme amount of suitable spawning habitat, spawning structure. So I know that there's a good population of fish that live in that area. Now, if it's like a giant backwater that's very consistent at that, you know, it's all like 2 foot or something like that, and they have to travel a long distance to get to deeper water for the summertime or the wintertime, then it's probably not that great of an area. But, you know, like both Chester Frost here and Harrison Bay, they both have deep water habitat that they can access fairly quickly, but no shortage of good shallow water that's, you know, in that 2 to 6 foot range throughout, you know, these bays. Both of them have that in spades. So that's what I look for on any lake that I go to. I look for those areas that just have everything, what I call a dynamic type area, where it's got both a bunch of spawning habitat and it's also got some great offshore structure. If you have those areas, they're guaranteed to be big producers. You look at some of the best areas on any lake, and I'm willing to bet that pretty much every lake and those hot spots that everybody talks about as far as regions of the lake, they've got great deep water access, but also a ton of good gradually sloping structure that allows those fish to spawn in a large area. If you have a steeper creek, obviously the fish are going to be spawning in creeks that have steeper shorelines, but they're going to be a very, very small select population of those fish that move back there. There may only be a handful of spawning pairs in the back of a steeper creek, just because there's just not enough good structure to go around for them that's suitable for incubating the eggs and creating that bed. So that's one thing I look for. Another thing that I love to look for on any lake is kind of the micro, you know, spawning creeks. All right, creeks or pockets. So I'll go to, you know, let's look for a good one. Oh, I know of a good one. So this right here. All right, so right here off the main river, got the deep water access. That's one of the great things about these smaller pockets and creeks is these are not necessarily areas where I'm looking for a huge population where I'm going to be fishing for multiple days, you know, and picking apart, you know, and trying to catch multiple limits of fish. They're an area where I'm going to look for a handful of fish, hopefully a limit of fish, and hope to do well with them. But some of these smaller pockets are great because you can run a pattern, and if one isn't on, you can move to the next, you can move to the next, and keep, you know, just do a milk run and find eventually you're going to find a pocket that is just absolutely loaded. So this one right here really jumps out at me. Very, very close to the main river channel. I've caught fish back here before. I know this one in particular has a lot of reeds around the edges of it, which is a really good thing for spawning fish on many lakes. Usually when you have reeds and you have a lake that needs to get up to full pool, or they have like a winter drawdown, usually you have to wait until the water comes up fairly high for those areas to play, and that's the case with this pocket right here. But you know, you've got all different you know, good spawning habitat in the pocket, and then they have access to deep water, so it's a really easy area for those fish to move in that live on the main lake, for them to just move in for a couple weeks and spawn. So those are the type of pockets I look for. You can even get smaller than that, honestly. You know, but you look for areas also like on Chickamauga, like slough areas, like, you know, these backwater sloughs, anywhere that is protected, again, has gradual sloping contours, but you also have the deep water access very close by. All these little pockets are going to play a big role. So another thing that I look for this time of year, there's a couple different types of cover that I really like to focus on during the spawn. One is docks. All right, so the great thing about the Navionics app is that you have no shortage of being able to find docks, you know, with this mapping. There's other mapping that they don't highlight the docks, so you get great contours, but you don't see where the docks are. And Navionics does a really good job of denoting the docks. As you can see here, this dock line right here, I've caught fish off of it before. This is a perfect example of what I'm looking for this time of year. Docks are great, and I've talked about them in recent videos. And the reason I love docks is because during the spawn, you have fish that can utilize them for pre-spawn, spawn, and post-spawn. So they're great for pre-spawn and post-spawn because you've got the ends of the docks where those big females and also fry garters are going to hang out before and after they spawn. And then when the fish are spawning, the base of the walkways, you know, where it's shallowest towards the shoreline, if they have dock posts, those are great pieces of cover for the fish to build their bed right next to, so they can kind of back themselves up against that dock post and protect the rest of their bed. They don't have to protect 360 degrees. They just have to protect what's in front of them because they're backed up against that post. The same thing happens with stumps this time of year. I cannot tell you how many awesome days I've had fishing stump fields on Lake Chickamauga and other lakes in the area. Finding good stumps is really a killer you know, pattern. You know, in that 2 to 4 foot range, really stumps are awesome for the same exact reason, because those fish love to build their beds right up against those stumps so they can protect what's in front of them as opposed to the whole perimeter of the bed. So stumps are a big deal this time of year. If I can find a nice shallow bay that again has that deep water access, that has a lot of stumps in it, dude, that is just lights out. I mean, that is the perfect combination. As long as the fish it's within the time period where the fish are spawning, they're going to be on some stumps. And you can just go around with a wacky rig and you know, look for those dark spots in the water, cast around those dark spots. And I've had 100 fish days doing that during the spring, you know, especially when those bucks move up and they're on the bed, they're real aggressive. And I've caught a lot of giant females doing that too. So docks, stumps, isolated, just random, blown in wood that is attached to the bottom, that is stationary, but is just kind of random isolated cover. That's all good. Finding those pockets that have a lot of reeds. Reeds are really good for the same exact reason as we just talked about. The bass love making their beds on reeds because it allows them that kind of wall on the backside for them to already have some level of protection from, bluegills or shiners or whatever, whoever wants to, come in and steal the eggs off of the bed. So, yeah, so those are the main things that I'm looking for. A couple of other things to consider this time of year when you're looking for the right types of spawning areas is keep in mind the predominant wind direction. There's nothing that can kill a spawning area faster than heavy wind, especially a heavy cold wind. So if you have predominantly north winds, which is pretty predominant this time of year, you need to be fishing pockets that are on the north side of a bay or the lake, and that way the wind is actually clearing the water out, so almost cleaning the water, as opposed to blowing into the area and pushing dirtier water into those areas. So usually speaking, you're talking about the northern and northeastern pockets on a lake that are facing the south. Those tend to be the best, and the ones that are on the south end facing north generally can be really susceptible to all types of different water changes, water clarity changes, dirty water, colder water, things like that. So just watch out for that. But anyways, the beautiful thing about this time of year, man, is that you can go out there and that these fish are shallow. One of the challenges you're going to face is that on any lake is the fact that there's a lot of pressure for these fish this time of year, because everybody knows that these fish are shallow, and so and shallow fish are the most susceptible to pressure. There's an argument against that now that forward-facing sonar is around, because now we can visually access those fish out in deeper water too. But shallow water is most people's preference. If they can catch them shallow, they want to go shallow. And so just keep in mind, it can be very difficult to catch some fish. And also keep in mind that not every backwater area is going to be productive. It may have all the right ingredients, but you may go back there and they're just not there. But if you keep running those patterns and searching out areas, you're going to find some backwater areas, some creeks and bays that just happen to have all the fish for whatever reason. Who knows exactly what's going on with them. Another thing that I will mention is we already talked about, like the lakes that are affected by winter drawdown and spring rising waters. And so this time of year, don't get discouraged if you're not catching them shallow when the water temperature is the right temperature, but the water's still rising to summer pool. On Lake Chickamauga specifically, most of the fish, even though the water temperature is perfect, most of the fish are going to wait until those water levels get to a normal high level. I don't think that the fish want to actually spawn and create those beds and go through all that trouble, and then all of a sudden, a few days later, have more water on top of them and them have a harder time incubating their eggs. I think they want the water to stabilize on the upper end, and then they move up and do their deal. But anyways, guys, I know that I talked about Chickamauga and the Tennessee River. This is just a really good example that I know a lot about. But these are principles you can apply anywhere across the country for your specific, whatever month those fish are spawning in. So anyways, guys, for sure, go check out the Navionics Mobile app if you haven't got it. It is a really awesome tool to be able to have and to just go, search and look for things before you hit the water. And other than that, If you guys are looking for ways to support the channel, the first thing you can do is, of course, subscribe to the channel. We just got to 10,000 subscribers, and we're quickly getting above that. I think we're at like 10,150 or something like that. And so I really appreciate everybody subscribing to the channel and continue to watch these videos on a regular basis. But also ask questions. I love answering questions in videos just like this. So if you have a specific question that you want me to answer in a video, please drop a comment below and I will get to that question, as long as it's something that I can actually give you guys great advice on. And otherwise, make sure you check out fishthemoment.com. We're still doing the virtual lessons. You can book me for an hour, and you can it's just us. We get to talk fishing, and whether that means scouting a new lake for an upcoming tournament or talking about certain techniques, whatever it is, I'm yours for an hour. And so go check that out. It's really, really cool. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and remember, trust the process.